What I'm going to be talking about is creating an automated thank you letter for donations. And this is using the parts inside of Blackboard and then using Power Automate to be able to generate those letters. My name's Ben Haynes and I'm the Power Platform Practice Lead at Encodian. And I deal with everything to do with the Power Platform. In fact, anything that Microsoft do with the word power in front of it, except for PowerPoint, which is probably obvious from what you're seeing. So what we're going to do today is we're going to build a thank you letter based off information on a gifts list, so that you're able to then go and take that information, transfer it into a Word document and send a letter to those people. Now we're going to be doing these as physical letters so that we can actually post these to people outwards. So we're going to need certain criteria. In order to do that, we need to know that they are going to be that the person is going to be able to see the letter, that they have an address, that they haven't given anonymously, and that we haven't acknowledged it already. So what we're going to be using today, we're going to be using Flower, which is a document management tool that allows you to manipulate your Word documents. We're going to use OneDrive to store our documents and manipulate them. Of course, we're going to use Razor's Edge to get our information. And then we're going to go and use Power Automate, which is Microsoft's Power workflow engine, to stick everything together. So the concepts we're going to be using are child flows. So the concept of being able to call another flow within a flow, which is a very powerful thing to be able to do. So you're able to take a flow and then call another, and then pass it arguments and pass it things back. So what it allows us to do is compartmentalize where we're putting all of those child's flows. The next thing we're going to look at is related data. And this is how we get all the different portions of our information that's in Razor's Edge to be able to go and produce the letter that we want. We're then going to look at how we add a document into Razor's Edge as a pointer, flow the document in, and we're also going to go and look at how we populate that document with the content that we have. So the steps are going to be creating our list, generating the letter, gathering the gifts, populating the letters, and then finally adding that document into the Razor's Edge. So we're going to go now look at the first option, which is our building a gifts list. So here we can see a list that I have inside of Razor's Edge. So from lists, I've gone and selected gifts. And I've gone and said, actually, I'm only interested in lists, only interested in gifts that are to do with one-off pledges. So they've either come in or they're a pledge payment or they're gifts in kind, but I could set this up any way that I like. What's important about what I'm setting up here is the fact that these particular items are what will be returned to my flow so that I can use these to send my letters. I've gone and here and set a date range from the 29th of May to the 30th of May. The reason that I've done this is because I know that the information here will work for what I'm doing because there's a known campaign. But what I would actually do in reality is set this to be yesterday. So when I did this, it would return me all the things that I got yesterday. And the next day when I called it, it would be all the ones that came in the day before, and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to go and set that back to my date range. And apply, and I get my 5 back again. So I've built my list, and that list now is going to be the one that will give me information. When we're looking at that list as well, we would have seen there that we had different aspects of things coming in to do with what campaign it was and what constituent it was, so that we can get the information accordingly. So the next thing we're going to go and do after we created our list is create a document template. So we're going to go and use Word for this, but we're going to set it up in a particular way that allows us to use Flower later on. So if I click back over into here, you can see my thank you letter template. You can see I'm using Contoso, so it's a fictional company. But in here, the most important thing to note are these tags. And these are saying how I want to fill in the letter when the action runs to fill it in. So it's going to go and put there the constituent's full name in, the constituent's address, their first name. And we're just using these tags either side to denote the location to put it and that they're ones to populate. And all this is fully documented. Also down here as well, I'm just going to do a little bit of condition, and I'm saying, well, if it's this particular campaign, I want my letter to say something different. So I'm saying your contribution will make a significant impact on the construction of new schools, because that's what that campaign is to do with. Otherwise, it's just on the education of children. And I can build that letter up using all of these types of tags. So I can put repeating tables in, I can put all sorts of content in that I want. After I've done this, I'm then can hit back, and please go away asking all the questions that you like, and I will follow them up at the end and answer as many as I can. When I finish with my letter, I'm going to go and store that letter in OneDrive. Why am I doing that? That's because it's easy for me to go and pull it on there and manipulate it. So my next step is to go and gather those lists from the last designated time period. So this is where we're starting to get into our Power Automate, our glue, if you like. We're going to learn in this one how we turn on the scheduling, how we get related data, and how we do those conditions based on what conditions we want to allow it to know to send the letter. So in here, I have my Power Automate. And you'll notice up there, I've just given it a name so that I know to what it pertains. So by putting BB Dev Days at the front of it, I know that anything that's called BB Dev Days pertains to this particular solution. And I've also used a concept that exists inside of the Power Platform called solutions. This is a solution here. What I'm able to do is go and package all of the components together, which means if I build this solution, which I can do from here, I'm able to package it all up and give it to somebody else so that they can then take that and put it into another environment and run it. And you will find as part of this session, which is that all the slides are there and this particular solution is available there for you. What happens when we do the reoccurrence up here is this is a scheduled flow, and the scheduled flow will run. And what it then does is it's saying I want to run on every day, and I've set it to run at 9 AM. So that's 9 AM local time here in the UK, hoping that I get that time right. Then what happens then is we call a new action that you can see here. And this action is talking to Raiser's Edge. And it's using an action that's associated with GIFs. So if I were to say in here, and I add an action, I can type in never spell, so let me go via the Blackboard way. You can see all of these different connectors come back. So we can do all these different things. And if I was to go and click on the gift one here, I can see I can go and get all these different things. I could create a gift if I wanted to, but I can also go and read them. And that's exactly what I've done here. So I lift these gifts. So I've got call the gifts list created in Raiser's Edge, and I call that particular, I select my list, which is the one we created here. And I say, I want you to return all of the items. And what it then does is return all those items as a big collection. And what I mean by that is it just returns it as an array or a collection or just a list of items that I can then iterate through to check them and produce the correct type of, I can then run them and get all the deck and create the right type of assets. Okay, so I'm just saying it's not very clear to read. So let me just zoom in. Is that better? Great. Sorry about that. That's so when we get into the more complicated ones, and they have to move the screen around a lot because there are some flows that get a lot more complicated, but that's fine. Great. I'm glad that's better. Some people are saying they're having some noise issues. What sort of issues are you having? Is it just buzzing, or am I splicing up? What sort of thing is happening? Okay. If anyone else is, it's being recorded, so and obviously you can ask me again if you want me to go over any point. I'm quite happy to do that. So we've now got our GIFs, all of our GIFs, and we're just setting a couple of variables. Variables are just a way of we can contain and understand information. So what we want to be able to do here is to have an acknowledged gift, and we want to know whether our gift has been acknowledged or not. And I'm setting it to false to start with. And I'm also going and getting the campaign ID, and I'm setting it to 0 to start with. Why am I setting them up like that? Because when I go through and look through each of the gifts returned, I need to set them back to their default so that I can set them as I'm running through each of the items. So first of all, I'm going to go and get some related data. Now, I know what my gift is. What I don't know is any information about the constituent who gave it, like their address. So what I can do is I can go and call related data. So this is another Blackboard Razor's Edge action, and I can go and get the constituent ID. And all I have to do is pass the constituent ID that was passed back to me as part of the list. So I'm going and getting that information. So now, if we were looking at Sandeep here, I'd have this information, and I have this information, which is his constituent record. So I've got all of that information as well now. So I've got his addresses and so on. What I'm now able to do is go through each of those elements to go and get information to allow me to decide whether I need to send it or not. So one of the things that comes back is another collection inside the collection, just to be confusing, which has got all of my gifts inside it. So what I'm doing is I'm getting all of the gifts associated with my main item, and I'm splitting it up and seeing whether there's a campaign in there. If I get a campaign ID back, I know I've got a campaign, and I need to keep that information so that my letter can reference that campaign if required. And I make another call to a campaign record that goes and then gives me all of that information about that campaign, and then I store it inside my variable. So I'm going around and doing all of that, and then I go and do exactly the same process again for the acknowledged collection, another collection within the main collection, and I can go and look in there and see whether at any point it's been acknowledged. If it has, I want to store that. Why do I want to store it? Because here is where I'm beginning to check to see whether the main collection exists further up. When I get it from the list gifts, that collection then is the one that I go through, and the values are here. Now I'm ready to go and check all of the different parts. So the first thing I'm looking at is whether from the constituent record of the person who gave the gift, do they want to be mailed? So I'm just checking that they don't want to be mailed, because then I know I'm going into this yes category. So I'm saying here is not equal to. The next one I'm looking at is whether the address that I'm given is actually active or not. Then I'm checking to see that it hasn't been acknowledged. Then I'm checking to see that I have an address to send them to. And most importantly, I am checking to see that they haven't said this was anonymous. All of their gifts anonymous, or just this one gift anonymous. If all of those values come back as being correct, I can go and generate my document. And of course, you can add any of these that you like. So if there are more conditions that you want, you can do that. So if you wanted to only not send it to their actual mail address, but send it to an email, you could put a check in there for that as well, because you'll have all that information by calling the constituent. The next thing I go and do is I go and look in my here, and this is a compose, which is a particular type of action that allows me to build something. And what I'm building here is a JSON object. And you'll see that JSON object, the name of the fields here, JSON works in key value pairs. So that's the key, that's the value, constituent's full name. I go and look at the thank you letter, and I can see that's what I'm going to put in there. So each of these particular tags that you see here are replicated inside of this. Once I've done that, I am ready to go and produce my document. And now I call a child flow. Child flow being a flow that exists within my solution, always has a trigger of being a button, which is why there's a little hand there, and I can go and call it and do more things. So we're going to go and call this save document to Raises Edge. So we go into here, and this is where it gets complicated lower down, but at the moment, we can say in here, here's the items we need. We need your gift ID, we want the name of the person, and what's that data we're going to populate the document with. I then just go and produce a name because I want to be able to make sure it's a date, because I'm running this a lot at the moment. I just want to make sure that all the different documents go in separately with different dates on them. And then I go and call another one to generate my thank you letter. What happens here, and we're in that one now, thank you, generate thank you letter. I take in the name of the name, and I take in the data I'm going to populate. Then I go and get my template that's stored inside of OneDrive. I'm using here something called an environment variable. An environment variable is something that allows me to set a variable that sits inside the entire Power Platform environment, so that if I to move it to another environment, I just have to update that variable and the flow still works. So this variable is pointing at the location of my thank you letter. I grab that thank you letter, and then I call my populate Word document using the body of the thank you letter that I've got here, the data that I've passed in. I go and tell it that I'm using the normal method. I'm not worried about missing values inside of the JSON, and it will now go away and generate that file and give me back Can you hear me now? Hooray! I went out of the room and came back again. So I do apologise. I don't know what happened. I lost it. It sort of threw me out, and then the next thing I knew, I was yeah. So never mind. So let's share my screen now and see if we can get back on. There we go. Can everyone see it? Okay. Great. So I was just explaining that it was complicated, and then it threw me out the room. So I'm not saying that the two are related, but it is complicated. So what happens here is I'm going away and I'm using HTTP requests, and this is all in the template that you can get from Blackboard for uploading a file, and I'm going and uploading it using HTTP. So all I'm doing in here is creating all the headers. Don't worry too much about this. If you go and get that template, and it's available straight within Flow, if you type in Blackboard, it will come up. All of this part is done for you, and it works. I can verify that. So the bit that's most important here is that I'm creating a document location inside of Razor's Edge. So I'm going and storing the document by taking the output and storing and creating a location inside Razor's Edge that I can then go and put my document in. And that is what I'm doing here. So I go and get my letter that I've created, I upload it, and then I go and create a gift attachment by adding my gift ID there, because I know what item it is. I'm saying it's a physical. I give it the name of my letter, the file name, the ID, the thumbnail, and off it goes. So I've run through all of the different things there. Let's see it running. So if I now go into here and gather the gifts on the last day, and I press test, I can manually run it. So I don't have to wait till tomorrow. So I'm just going to go and load it up now. And we're going to go and run the flow. And what we'll see is we'll begin to see it getting all the different information. So there it's hit the recurrence. And if I hit on list gifts, I begin to get information back. And I can see I've got 4 items out. Yeah, it is possible to get a copy of the flow. It's in session details. I'll ensure that you would be able to see that. So inside of there, all the information is coming back, and you can see I've got a count of all of the different items, and there's the information we were talking about. So when we were talking about the acknowledgements, unfortunately, one of the things with these lovely no-code, low-code solutions is you do have to understand JSON. And that's what we're getting here, because this is how the collection is returned. That little square bracket there and that little square bracket there indicates it's a collection. So that's the one we're looking through for our acknowledgements. We're going through here and we can now see it's been successful. We can look at our 4 items as they came through. So we go and get our constituent. There he is, there's the first one that comes through. So if we went and looked at our list, we can see that item there. So it's all beginning to flow in and work. And actually, he has been acknowledged. So we wouldn't expect to see one for that one. But we know that Sandeep has not been acknowledged. So we're going to go and click on that one there. The record comes up. And we can see our thank you letter. And there's the thank you letter that we've just created. That's just been through. And when I click on this, here is our completed letter to Sandeep. It's got our logo. It says, Dear Sandeep. It's worked out that he wasn't part of that particular campaign. And so it's just said he will have an impact on the children and the lives of those we serve. We've got his information there. We sent it to him. His letter is associated with our record and it is ready to go. And there we have created an end-to-end and there we have, is that better for the maximizing? Great. So that means that we're now able to send it end to end. So I'm now quite happy to ask any questions. I realise there's a lot of information there that I've put over in a very quick time, but also you lost me for a while there, so I do understand about that. I put all the information into the chat in a moment associated with where you can get all that different types of information from. And I'll just have a look at any of the questions that have been asked. Please go ahead and ask any other questions. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so that I can put the questions onto the bigger screen and you don't see all the questions that have been asked. So first one is Power Automate free? If not, would you know how much it is? That's a very interesting question. The answer to that is it is free if you're part of your Microsoft 365 license. However, the Blackboard connector is what's called a premium connector, which means it's behind a firewall, a paywall, I beg your pardon. What that means is that you will need to have an additional license for it to be able to use it inside of Flow. You can buy separate Flow licenses, you can buy Flow per user licenses. It's a large area. If you need to look at it, if you go to the Power Automate Pricing's webpage, at the bottom you'll see a guide as to what to buy and how to buy it. When I'm talking about Flower, do I mean Power Automate Flow? No, Flower is an action that's written by Encodian that will do the work for you. It will do the it will change things to PDFs. It will it can put watermarks in, and the other thing it can do is populate documents based on how you put those tags together. You can, again, with Flower, you can get a freer version of it when you can use 30 actions per month, and then there's also a premium level as well if you want to do more than that. Can the document be edited and updated in that same location? Yes, it can, and that you want to do that. So once you put the template into OneDrive, that's where you're going to be pulling it from, so you can change it. Of course, what you can do if you want to is change the flow around, so you could have multiple templates, because some templates might not suit what you're doing. You might not want to put loads of ifs and buts inside of the template. So you could say, if it's this campaign, I want you to go and get this particular one. If it's this campaign, I want you to go and do that. Because you've got that information already, you're able to then go and do that. So Mark's asking, how did I get all the GIFs? What I've got is a list that sits inside of Razor's Edge for GIFs, and I've configured that list to pull back the information that I want. So you could say, I want to pull back all the GIFs that came in yesterday that are not reoccurring if they're just one-off GIFs. And then you can tailor it accordingly. So Ben's asking, Ben, do you need to generate the campaign and knowledge fields separately? Yeah, I am using them separately because they're associated with the gift itself. So the gift is one record, and then I have to go and get all the associated parts. However, when I pull back that gift, it gives me a collection to say whether it's acknowledged. So just by calling this list, that part of the information will come back, and that's when I'm iterating through. Can the merge final letters be edited? For example, yes, you could absolutely do that. So what you could do is you could stop the flow at the point at which you put your letters into OneDrive, and then say, I want someone to go and review all of those. And then you could write another schedule that goes through, another schedule flow that was to go through that particular library and look at them to say they've been approved, and then go and send them out. So associated with the document, you could put some metadata in there to say what ID it is and what gift it's associated with. So you could almost do a two-step process. So that's how you do that. That's certainly a customization you could do. You just need to split the flows up. So Susan, it's only the part that does the generation of the document. So if you go into this part here, it's actually just this. I've done it without sharing my screen, but it's actually just one action that tells you whether it populates it or not. So so you could, if you wanted to, use the word connector. That is a premium connector. The flower isn't. and you can go to the Encodian site, get yourself an API, and start using it with the 30 per month, and then there is a paid tier as well, but it depends how many you want to create. After the word is, so Alex is asking me, after the word is merged, drafted, you can use approve action. You could put an approve action in, yes, certainly. So you could use the approvals flow. That would be another way of doing it. So inside of flow, there's the ability to do approvals. And this is, I believe, what Alex is talking about, and that what you could do is generate the document and then send that person an approval notification into their email, and they can say whether they approve the document to go out or not. If they do, the rest of the flow would carry on. It would go and send them out. One of the reasons you might not want to do that is if you're dealing with a lot of letters. So if you've had a campaign and it's been successful the next day and they're all coming in, you may not want to go and do that. But it is certainly an option for certain letters if you wanted them to go out. You could look for certain client IDs or certain campaigns. All of that's available to you to do conditionally. MS does have the word to do word merge. Yes, it's a premium connector. The Flower does a lot of other things as well. It can convert it to PDF, and it's worth a look, but by all means, you can go and do exactly the same thing. Take out the encoding thing and call Word. You just have to change your document as to how you do the merge inside of there. Are there any other questions? I think, Mark, there's been a mix-up in what session it was. So I'm actually believe now that I'm repeating this session at 8 o'clock or about 8:15. So that would be 3:15 Eastern time, and and if you go and find that and you look for my name inside of the sessions, all the slides that I've done are there, and you can download the flow itself. There, it's inside a solution. You can then download that and upload it.
Hey, Ben, thank you so much for stepping in. I'm sorry it wasn't the session people are expecting, but it looks like a lot of folks stuck around and got a lot of good information from you. We'll get the session updated, but as you said, the one that's later this afternoon has all of the resources and files co-located with it, but we'll get it updated for this one as well. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you back in a few hours for a repeat performance. We'll leave the stage for now. You can go back to the listeners, and we'll get our next ready to come up. Thanks so much, Kyle. Thank you.